This video is going to cover our wall section demo that we're going to complete in class, but in case you miss it or just want a refresher, there are a few files up on As You Learn that will be really helpful for completing this. One of them being, of course, the instruction sheet. And then there's also going to be 2 final product PDFs, one of them being a color copy or the layer copy to help show which layer everything's going to be in, and then the other being the final product black and white or the line weight version of the drawing. And just like with our other assignments, this one is going to have a template file in there as well on As You Learn, a DWT, which you're going to want to make sure you download from As You Learn. You do not want to open it from As You Learn, you just want to download it. So when we are in AutoCAD, what we're going to want to do for that template file is we're going to want to start a new drawing. So I'm going to click on this little arrow next to new. We're going to browse our templates. And then we're going to go look in our downloads folder, and we're going to want to use this wall section template. So go ahead and open that up. So in this template, I've already kind of built out part of the building for you. So we've already got our foundation system in here, as well as then our floor joist and the bottom of our wall and the sill of our window. So what we're going to do is finish building out the rest of our building. And again, just like with our 3-room shed project, we're going to be doing this entire thing at full size. We're not really going to worry too much about scaling. Scaling is going to be something that comes after the fact. If we go look in our paper space like we did for our site plan, so I'm going to click on my paper space tab here. I have 3 viewports set up. So essentially these will put those break lines in there automatically for us. So it's going to put a little gap between each of them. And as we finish building out our wall section, it'll appear here in this top one. Again, let's just look at our title block and fill in some of the blanks here. So for our major, you're going to want to just double click on there, and you're going to want to make sure that you put your major there. Please make sure you are lettering. And again, if you are construction management or ATD, your major is building sciences. You can put that -CM or that -ATD, but your major is building science. For our class project, I have this one as in class. I guess technically this is number 3, but again, just refer to whatever I tell you to do in your class session. And then towards the bottom, again, for our name, go ahead and double click. And your last name in all caps, comma, your first name. And if your name doesn't fit, feel free to have it go onto 2 lines or even just use your first initial. The date, you're probably going to have a different date than I am, but I'm just going to fill in the date that is today. So it's 2025. It is May 19th. Then our scale, these viewports have already been set up for 1 inch equals a foot, and we also have our title and our sheet ID already set up for us. So we've already got all of those things set up. Now we're going to go back into our model space. So I'm going to click on model, and we're going to finish building out our wall section. So our spot elevations here are kind of letting us know where the top of our sill plate for our window is, the bottom of our header, and then the top of our wall plate are going to be. So that's going to help me build out the rest of this wall section. The first thing I'm going to do is draw a reference line to figure out where I can take this sill plate and sort of flip it to become a header of sorts. So I'm going to switch my layer to a anno def point, my guideline layer, so that this way if I leave this line here, it doesn't accidentally mess me up. And I'm going to draw a line from the bottom of header to the top of the sill. So I'm just kind of referencing those spot elevations or those targets. That'll give me a good midpoint then that I could just draw across for. Next is I'm going to highlight this portion of the wall. So I'm going to create a kind of bounding box, probably about that big. It's going to give me more than I necessarily want, but I'd rather have more than not enough. and I'm going to use the mirror tool, which is keyboard shortcut MI, enter, and for my mirror line, I want to go off the middle of this line here. If midpoint isn't showing up, what you can do is while in the mirror tool, if you hold shift and right click, you can force it to go to the midpoint. And then you can click on that middle, move your cursor straight across, and click again. The last step of a mirror is it's asking if we want to erase our source, which would be this. So we're going to want to click no, so that way we keep our original source for it. The next thing I'm going to do is just draw another guideline across from where the top of my plate sits. So I'm still in A-Ano-Def. I'm going to draw a line across the top of my plate, hit escape 100 times, and then I'm just going to trim this part of the building away. So I'm going to use keyboard shortcut TR, enter, and I'm just going to trim a lot of that out. I could also have deleted some of it after I trimmed it. And then I'll hit escape 700 times. I'll continue on building out my header. So let's go look at our kind of final product up here. So for the rest of my header, I've got two 2x6s sitting vertically and then another 2x6 sitting horizontally in there. Now, I already have a 2x6 here built out, so what I'm going to do is just kind of copy and rotate and then copy into place this 2x6 here. So I'm going to select both the rectangle and those diagonal lines. I'm going to use the copy command, which is keyboard shortcut CO, and I'm going to make 2 copies of it over here. Hit escape 100 times, and then I'm going to take one of them and I'm going to rotate it, which is keyboard shortcut RO, grab it by a point, and then I'm going to rotate it to be vertical. My next step is that I'm going to copy them into place here to build out this header, and I want to pay attention to where I'm selecting them. So last times I didn't really care too much about the base point. This time I am going to care. So I'm going to highlight this vertical one, and then I'm going to use copy, which is CO, or right click copy. I'm going to grab it by the bottom left so I can put it right there. I'll hit escape because I want to change my base point. Highlight it again, right click, copy. This time I'm going to grab it by the bottom right so I can put it right there. Hit escape 100 times. I'll take this horizontal one, right click, copy, grab it, place it. So now I've got my header built out. We also have then our double top plate. So I'm going to take this one here and copy 2 of them into where I have this reference line for the top of my plate. I'm going to highlight it, right click, copy, grab it by the corner, and then 1, 2. And then I'll hit escape 100,000 times. At this point, I don't really need these 2x6s anymore, so I'm going to select both of them and just hit the delete key on my keyboard to get rid of them. And now I've got my top of plate created. Next, I'm going to build out my roof. So I'm going to start it based off of this blue line just because that has a reference point or a snap point that I can go off of. And we have a slope of 312. So for every 3 feet of rise, we have 12 feet of run for it. So I'm still in my depth point layer. I'm going to draw a line from where the top of plate is, and I'm going to go up 3 feet, enter, over 12 feet, enter. And then I'm going to go back to where I started, click, and then hit escape 100 times to close it. So these 2 lines I really just had as a reference to figure out where things were going. So I'm just going to select them and then hit delete to get rid of them. And then I'm going to offset this line up the thickness of my materials and then down the thickness of my ceiling. So looking at some of our materials, our ceiling here is 5/8 of an inch gypsum wallboard. Our rafter here is a 2x8, which means it's going to be 7 1/4 up because that's the actual thickness. And then we have 3/4 inch plywood, and then our metal roofing says C manufacturing specs. So I'm going to let you know that we're going to do that 1.5 inches for it. So I'm going to start the offset command, which is keyboard shortcut O, enter. I like using through, again, just personal preference, so I'll hit enter. I'm going to take this line, my original line, I'm going to go up 7 1/4 inches for the thickness of my 2x8. I'm going to take this new top line, I'm going to bring it up again 3/4 of an inch for my plywood decking. And then I'm going to take my new top line and I'm going to bring it up one more time, 1.5 inches for my roofing. I'm going to go back to my original line and I'm going to bring that down 5/8 of an inch down for my drywall for my ceiling. I'll hit escape 700 times. And then I'm going to take the very bottom and very top of those slanted lines, and I'm going to switch them to A-sect outline, this yellow layer. And then the 3 lines in the middle, I'm going to put on A-sect medium, which is a blue layer. Next, I'm going to trim my line work as well as then extend some of it. So I'm going to trim it to this def point line right here. So that is keyboard shortcut TR, trim, trim. And then while I'm in the trim tool, I'm going to extend my line work over here. So I'll zoom in because I know the blue can sometimes be hard to see. I'm going to hold the shift tool and I'm going to bring these yellow line all the way out to meet the other yellow. I'm going to meet this blue line out to meet its blue. And then I'm going to bring this line up. And I also want to bring this upper blue line all the way out to the yellow. Then I'm going to trim here to trim all of this off. These little lines up here, make sure to get rid of them. And I don't necessarily want to trim all of this off in here. I do want to trim that little bit away. But I'm actually going to use this to kind of help with that joint for where my ceiling and my drywall meet. And let's trim those little bits up there away as well. We'll have to put a little bit of it back, but it's okay. I'll hit escape 100 times. Now I'm going to switch my layer to A-sect medium, this blue layer, and I'm going to draw a line that just kind of makes a perpendicular angle right here. Hit escape 100 times. Now if we are zoomed in our drawing, let me zoom in. We have a little bit of blue line here, and then the rest of it's yellow. Now, we don't have that here. We just only have a yellow line. So what we could do is we could take this yellow line, I could take that grip and make it shorter, and then just draw another blue one in there. Or if I Control Z to undo that, I could also take this line, I can click on it to select it, and I can use the command break at point. All one word, no space. And then for my break point, I can click on where this line intersects it. And now I have 2 individual lines. So I could click on this one and I can switch it to A-sect medium. And now I have little blue line and like longer yellow one. The next thing I'll do is I'll add in my fascia board here. So that's going to be made out of a 2x8, but since part of it's going to get lobbed off anyway from this slope, really as long as we just go over 1.5 inches and then up to wherever we meet, we'd be fine in this case. But we could also take one of the 2x8s from down here in our floor and copy it up there if we wanted. So I could select one of these. I could right click, copy, grab it by a corner, and put it up here in this corner, and then trim. Like I can move these pink blocking lines, and then I could trim all of this off up here. So that could be one option. My other option could be in the asect medium layer to draw a polyline or a line from the side of my plywood sheathing over 1.5 inches and then up to wherever we meet. And then to switch my layer to asect light, this magenta layer, and then draw 2 lines. So keyboard shortcut L for line across. It'll give me the same end result, so it doesn't really matter which way you go. Next, we'll add in our roof kind of slope here. So for this roof, we want to create a perpendicular edge on it. And what is really cool that we can do is, so we used a slope of 312 in order to create this slope here. So if we go up 12 over 3, we'll then get a perpendicular corner for it. So what I'm going to do is switch my layer to ANO def, and then I'm going to draw a line, and I'm going to go up 12 inches over 3 inches, and that gives me then that perpendicular, but I drew it from the wrong spot. So my 2 options would be, I could also take this line and I could use move to move it down there. So I wanted it on the bottom of it. Oops. Or I could just delete the whole thing. Sorry, I'm not starting the recording over. And I could draw a line from there up 12 over 3, back, hit escape 100 times, and then I'm going to use trim and extend, so that's keyboard shortcut TR. I'll hold shift to extend that line out, and then I'll release shift to trim the rest of that line off. I'll hit escape 100 times, click on this def point line that's left, and switch it to asect outline. Next, I'll add in the rest of what would be like my house wrap. So that's what this hidden line here is representing. And because house wrap is going to be so thin, we're going to have to draw it a little bit thicker than it actually is. So we're going to offset it up 1/8 of an inch. So to do that, I'm going to start offset, which is keyboard shortcut O, enter. Again, I always like the distance that is through, so I'm just going to hit enter again. I'm going to click on this line and I'm going to go up 1/8 of an inch or 0.125. And then I'll hit escape 100 times. Then I'm going to use trim and extend. So that's keyboard shortcut TR. Hold shift to extend this line up. And then click on that line to trim it. Hit escape 100 times. We're going to keep this one in asect medium, but we're going to do a line type override to make it into a hidden style line. So that way it'll remain blue, but it'll also be hidden in there. Next, I'll add my gutter in, which I'm going to do using a circle that I'm going to trim just because I really dislike the arc tool. So I'm going to switch my layer to asect outline. And for my circle type, I'm going to click on this little arrow underneath circle, and I'm going to use a 2-point circle so I can kind of show where one of the edges or the quadrants of the circle is. I'm going to select right where the bottom of my roof is, and then our gutter, I believe, is 4.5 inches in diameter. Yes. Yes, it is. So I'm going to go straight over 4.5 inches. Then I'm going to offset it in the thickness for this gutter. I'm just going to eyeball or guess a number a little bit. So I'm going to do O, enter, distance, I'll leave it as through. So I'll hit enter again, and I'll bring it in, let's say 1/8 of an inch, 0.125. Then I'm going to hit escape, draw a line all the way across, escape a bunch of times, and then trim. So TR, and cut all that out. And so there's my gutter. Switch my layer to asect medium and draw a line across here. I could have also used that break at point tool to cut this so I could have 2 different lines or 2 different layers going on in there. And then last of our line work we should need to add would be our flashing and kind of coping details. There we go. I couldn't get this file to open up. So for our flashing, we've got a little bit of flashing right here underneath. Essentially, this is going to be installed under our roof, between like our roof and our decking here, so that this way, if water was to try to seep in there, it's kind of just sealing it off and giving it a drip edge. We also have another one here in our window. And then we also have a drip edge here underneath our wall for it. So for those, I'm going to switch my layer to asect outline, and I'm going to draw a line from under my gutter, and then I'm going to go out and amount. Don't really put specific measurements there and just kind of eyeball stuff. And then I'll make another line here that goes out and amount. And I believe the one down here is already there. Yes, that little cope's there already. So if we go look in our paper space, we can see then that kind of the rest of our building is already built out for us a little bit. This line up here, not worried about it because it's a def point line, so it won't print. If you want to delete it, you definitely can, but you certainly don't have to. Same thing then with like our top of plate line here. Since we did it in our def point layer, we don't have to worry about it printing out at all. So our next step is we are going to be adding in all of our various hatch patterns to our building, which our instructions have listed for what our hatch patterns are going to be used for in there. We'll come back and we'll do our bat insulation last, just because it doesn't actually use the hatch tool. And just please note that unless noted, all of these hatch patterns are going to be in the layer A Anopat. So we're going to use ANSI 37 to represent concrete masonry units, and we're going to use a scale of 8 for those. So let's switch our layer to A Anopat. And I'm going to change the color of mine. I don't want you to do that, but I'm going to change the color just so you can see it easier on the screen. But please leave your color as is. So now that I'm in my A Anopat layer, I'm going to start the hatch tool. Keyboard shortcut H. We're going to use the pattern ANSI 37 with a scale of 8 for our concrete masonry units. So inside all 4 of the walls, we're going to use the pattern AR sand with a scale of 1 to represent the concrete fill that's going on inside of our cells of our CMUs. So we'll start the hatch tool again, keyboard shortcut H. For our pattern, we'll use AR sand, and we'll use a scale of 1 inside all of these cells. whoops, so let me Control Z. Sometimes if you're too zoomed in, it might fill in areas you don't want filled in. So let me hit Escape 100 times. We're going to use the pattern AR Conc to represent cast in place concrete. We're going to use a scale of 1 for that as well. So we'll start the hatch tool again. For our pattern, we want AR Conc and a scale of 1 for our cast in place concrete. For our footing, let's hit Escape 100 times. We'll use the pattern AR Sand to represent our drywall or our gypsum wallboard with a hatch scale of 0.25. So we have drywall in a few places. So again, still in our ANOPAT, we'll do hatch, which is H enter. We'll do a pattern of AR Sand and a scale of 0.25. So we have drywall in our ceiling. We have drywall of our interior wall here. We also then have drywall for our interior wall underneath as well, underneath our window. And then I'll hit Escape 100 times. We're going to use the pattern Dulmit to represent plywood with a scale of 1. So still in our ANOPAT layer, we'll do hatch. We'll use the pattern Dulmit and a scale of 1 for our plywood subfloor. Now, in order to put it in our walls for our sheathing as well, we're going to have to hit Escape, go back into the tool, and then we can set the angle to be 90 degrees for our plywood sheathing. Anytime you're changing a setting, you have to leave the command and go back into it. So again, in order to put it in for our decking here, we're going to have to hit Escape to end the tool, H, enter to go back in. Then we can put it for our roof decking. And usually I would just spin it around until it looks parallel. And then I'll hit Escape 100 times. We'll use the pattern Earth to represent our compacted fill soil with a hatch scale of 8. This one we are going to put in the layer ANOPOCHE. So back in AutoCAD, we're going to switch our layer to ANOPOCHE. And then we're going to start the hatch tool, keyword shortcut H. Our pattern is going to be Earth. Our angle is going to be 0. And our scale is going to be 8. And we're going to fill in the earth around here. Hit Escape 100 times. While I'm still in the solid tool, I'll go ahead and fill in these rebar points as well. So I'll stay in ANOPOCHE. I'll go into hatch, so H, enter. I'll go all the way up to the top for solid. 1, 2, 3. Hit Escape 100 times. And then I'll go back into my ANOPAT layer. So for the rest of my hatches, I'm going to use the hatch pattern Gravel to represent crushed stone with a scale of 2. So we have gravel in our French drain system here. So I'm back in ANOPAT. I'll start hatch. H, enter for my pattern. I'm going to use gravel and a scale of 2. Let's hit Escape 100 times. I'll use the pattern Net to represent rigid insulation with a hatch scale of 8. So we have rigid insulation in a couple spots. So I'm still in ANOPAT. I'll start hatch. I'll use the pattern net and a scale of 8. So we have some rigid insulation hanging out outside of our foundation here. Let me hit escape a couple times. We've got those 2 blue boards essentially. And then we also have some rigid insulation built up in this header up here. Next, we'll use the hatch pattern line to represent wood trim and floor finish. We'll use a scale of 4 for trim, and we'll use a scale of 1 for finish. So I'll start the hatch tool. We'll go use the line hatch, and we'll use a scale of 4 for our wood trim. So that's going to be here, 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 and here. So 5 points around the top of the window as well as the bottom. And then we also have our baseboard trim here at the bottom. Then we'll hit escape 100 times. And then we're going to start the hatch tool. We'll still use the pattern line, but this time we'll use a scale of 1 for our finished floor. Hit escape 100 times. And we're going to use the hatch pattern plast to represent our drainage mats with a scale of 8. So still in ANOPAT, we'll use hatch, H, enter. We'll use the plast, scale of 8. And our drainage mats are located all around our foundation and footing. So these 2 areas. I hit escape. Before we move on to our annotations, the next thing then we'll do would be to go up to our first kind of piece of information related to our bat insulation. So those are not a hatch pattern within the hatch command. It's rather just a different line type that we're going to use. So we have bat insulation all throughout our floor here. So what we're going to do is, while still in the ANOPAT layer, we're just going to draw a line, L, enter, from the middle of all of our joists. So I'll end the line command and go back into the line command in between all of my joists. And then what I'll do is, after I'm done, I'll hit escape 100 times. I'll select all 3 of those lines, and then I'm going to come over into my properties panel and I'm going to adjust their line types. So if you don't have your properties panel open, again, it is keyboard shortcut PROP to open it up. And what we want to do is do a line type override to make these bat. And then we also want to do a line type scale override to make them smaller. And sometimes this is playing a game with numbers to figure out what's going to fit best within a specific area. If you want to make that not happen, you can click on your endpoints and sort of ever so slightly adjust. Sometimes it's a fickle little game, but you won't be able to trim them. See if I do 0.7, there we go. I kind of like that. You're not going to be able to trim them because, as far as AutoCAD's concerned, this is just a straight line going all the way across here. There's nothing else really happening to it. Might be as good as I'm going to get them to fit. I'll do another one here. Still in ANOPAT, I'm just going to draw a line through the middle. And then I can select that line And I could do a line type override to make it batt insulation, and then a scale override to make it smaller. We've got a little bit here, another line, and then a line type override, and a line type scale. There we go. That fits. That's good. For this one, I'm going to have to take one of these two lines and offset it half of a 2x8, which would be 3 and, oh geez, I'll have to break out a calculator if I'm honest. I think 3 and 5/8. I could be wrong though. 7.25 divided by 2. Yeah. Yeah, I was right. I think. Yeah. Woo, got me. Math is not my strong suit. So I'm going to use offset, set my distances through. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'll take this line and I'm going to bring it up 3.625. Hit escape 100 times. I'm going to switch its layer to a anopat. And then I'm going to change its line type to be batt. And I'm going to change its scale. And then I can also use trim while holding shift to make that line kind of fit a little bit better. And then that would be my drawing kind of completed. Let me switch my gray back to be in the correct gray for my hatches. And then I'd be working on adding in my annotations for my drawing. So for your annotations, I've actually given you a few of them kind of pre-done in here. And you'll notice, and it's something we spoke about in class too, about the justification of our annotations is that they're all either going to be left justified or right justified. That in this case, I have all of my arrows like terminating at the same exact spot because it's going to make that text a lot easier to read. A couple of other notes important to annotations is that you never want to cross any of these arrowheads. So you'll see that kind of as I'm working my way up, none of these arrowheads are crossing. And of course, too, that anything related to the exterior is on the outside of the building, and then anything related to the interior is on the inside. So you have a few options of putting in these leaders. One being that over here, we have a few already placed and rotated around, so you can absolutely just take these and then use the copy tool, keyboard shortcut CO, to copy them into place. So I'm just going to place one roughly here, and I'll hit escape. To move it, you can move that elbow by stretching it up and down, and then you can click on this arrow here to then move it over, so it is going to be terminating at that same spot. And then we can make it say whatever we want. So I can have it say it's a 2x8 wood rafter, 16 inches on center. So I'm just going to move that drawing onto another screen to make it a little easier for me to type some of these out. So I'm just going to double click in there. I'm going to say 2x8 wood rafters at 16 inches on center. Then I can take this same one here and I can start kind of using that one as like my copy to kind of work my way down. So I can click on it and then CO to grab it by its arrowhead and then sort of move it. A lot of times you'll find that it wants to snap to things that you don't want it to. So for instance, if this is where I want it pointing, but see that green triangle, that's where it's going to go. So sometimes what you may want to do is turn your object snaps off, copy it, so that way you can kind of free it to go where you want it to, hit escape 100 times, and then just turn your object snaps back on. And again, if I want to move the elbow, or if I want to move the text, I can move it around. And then this one's going to say that insulation. And I'll just do a few more on this side. I'm not going to place all of them in this video, but I will place a couple more of them. So I can take this, copy it, and let's say I want it to point to my drywall. Another thing too is you can hover over points to kind of make the snap not happen. And then I can move this over. So I'll highlight all my text. Sometimes when you go to draw or type something in, that little light bulb will appear where it wants to auto do something. You can just Control Z to un-auto do it. And then we can type, same thing, sometimes fractions will auto. You can just Control Z to undo them. And then you can kind of just work your way through looking at the example drawing and adding in your text to it. Now, if you want to change which way that arrow is pointing, so again, I can take this one, I can copy it, grab it, point it somewhere, I'll put it there, I'll hit escape. You can grab it by that elbow and you can straighten it out. It's not going to snap necessarily to being straight, but we can eyeball it pretty well. And then this one, I don't even have to replace the whole thing. I just have to replace this to say a 1/2 inch gypsum wallboard for it. A couple of other notes when you're placing some of these is be like a little aware or cautious of the viewports that exist in this paper space. So as we're placing our text, it's appearing in here. We have sort of this whole area in between our windows that is abyss space. So let's say, for instance, I'll take this one and I'm going to copy it and I'll put it towards the trim. And let's say, for whatever reason, I pull it real high up here and over. For whatever reason, I'm going that high up. In our drawing, it kind of goes up here, so let's say that this wouldn't be that crazy. I can have it type out whatever I want it to say. I can have it here say that this is the wood baseboard, but when I go look at it in paper space, the text isn't there because it's too high up. It's not getting captured in either of these viewports. So what you want to make sure is that you have this text in an area where it's not going to be kind of in this no zone. So that way that text is going to show up. Similar things also happen when you have your roof elements up here. So I could take this one, right click copy, and I could put it for my roofing. Grab it by the elbow to move it up and move it over. And I can have my note there, but it's just sitting way above. It's kind of sitting almost in no man's land. So I want to make sure that this is going to be down far enough that it's going to be visible text that I can actually read within it. So when you're putting in all of your annotations, just make sure that they're going to be readable within that final product of that paper space area. And then of course, after adding in all of our annotations, our final step would be to save our work. So again, we can click the red A and save it. We can go to save or save as. You want to make sure that you are saving it to your flash drive, or if you're like me and working on your own desktop, you can then just save it wherever you want on your own desktop. I'm going to go into my Google Drive and put it in with the rest of my AutoCAD assignments. And for our name, we want BSC 1210, our last name in all caps, our first name lowercase, and then dash wall section. Again, you do not type out that DWG part. That part's going to get added automatically as your file extension.